Hey, it's Samantha Hartley of the Profitable Joyful Consulting Podcast. This season, we're talking about consulting insights. And one of the most insightful things that I ever saw was Ashley's post about how to end your day on time. And so I really wanted to talk with you about this concept of like that a day would have an ending, that your workday would have an ending, because I know a lot of consultants struggle with this. So I'm so excited to introduce you to my guest. This is Ashley DePaulis. Ashley is an embodied success expert. Love that. Yeah. Embodied success. She works with highly driven team leaders to solve the stress, disengagement, and declining ROI of professionals in the hybrid workplace so that both the organization and its people can thrive. Welcome, Ashley.
Thank you for having me, Samantha.
So I'm just really excited to talk to you about this because I know personally I struggled with this for years. You know, my personal kind of peak story about this was that I had a coach that I was working with, and I said, I can never leave my office because I'm always kind of going back in there for like one more thing. I even had a dedicated office in the home. And he said, I want you to take your computer and put a cloth over it, like a parrot cage, so that you can't see it. It's going to go to sleep. It's going to have a little night time, your computer. So put the blanket over it and then go away. And, you know, it's kind of like ridiculous, as are many things, when we I finally need to make a special effort to change this. But that was the beginning of me being able to leave the office at all. It wasn't at a reasonable time, but just like to end my day. And then gradually I learned to end my day earlier and earlier. So I would love to hear from you. Like, what's a story of a client that you've worked with, or maybe your own story that illustrates how you've been dealing with ending the workday?
I love that. And as you're telling that story now, I remember hearing it when we first met. So I've also struggled with this, somebody that's worked at home for a very long time. And I finally got over it. And I think I finally got over it partly because of my dog and him always telling me what to do, which I think you can relate to.
Totally.
But a lot of times with my clients, what I've seen or the conversation I've heard from them is I'm arriving home completely tapped out, when we used to go to an office and come home, or they felt like they couldn't stop because other people weren't stopping. So in those moments, what is the choice that we can make to do things a little differently? And one of my clients that comes to mind, who was a healthcare worker, and they're very compassionate and empathetic and, want to be there for all their patients. And one thing she realized that she did to kind of deal with that stress or that, compassion fatigue that she was carrying was she would start scrolling on the internet like many of us do. So that distraction. So she was numbing to kind of get over her day and not taking care of herself. So her biggest shift, although she didn't come in with the intention of, I want to stop scrolling on the internet, she came in with the intention of, I don't want to keep experiencing pain in my body. I want to take care of myself better. When she started focusing on taking care of herself better, then she just ultimately stopped scrolling and realized how much more time she had. So that's just one example of like little shifts that we don't even realize that we can make that change everything. It's like just that little shift in focus.
It's amazing because I'm familiar with the kind of the doom scrolling, and I have not thought of it as numbing, but I realize, of course, it is. Why is it so hard for, my audience are consultants. So a lot of us are, one person businesses, or, we might have a team, but we're one person in our home office for the most part. Why is it so hard for consultants to end their day at a reasonable hour?
Because you're always thinking about work and you feel passionate about what you do. And and I think because we're so intellectual in everything that we do all day, it's that I've had people say through that LinkedIn post, like, I'm good at physically ending my day. There were three themes. So either good at physically ending your day, but then you're still even if you go out for a walk, you're still thinking about your day. Then not having transition time between the workday and like life. So in not being able to turn off the mind, like the mind stays revved up, or feeling guilty for not working, or feeling guilty for working in a way that serves you best, kind of jumping from life to work, work to life throughout your day. So those were the common themes that I saw. And I think a lot of times it's that the stress of having your own business and making money, like you're worried about money, you're worried about clients, you like everything is on your back. And it just is never ending sometimes.
I mean, I totally resonate with what you're talking about. And I've seen this in so many of my clients, who really will struggle the most are people like, if the business isn't going well right now, they feel like they cannot not work. And I think back to my own years of like when I was building the business and having a hard time. And that was, I was really struggling with, divorcing two ideas that were constantly together. You have to work hard to get what you want. Which my listeners to this podcast know is a belief. I think it's a dangerous belief. It was a family belief that I have pretty much debunked for myself almost entirely. But at the time I was still wrapped up in that. And well, things aren't going well. So I can't afford to not be working all the time until things are going well. And so if you put those two things together, they just had this, magnifying effect of, I was just working always, all the time. And what you've said that I think is really fascinating is that we can't stop thinking about work, even when we're not working. And I have had moments when I'm kind of like cranky and I go, I'm still thinking about so-and-so's something like that's really, that I'm not paid by my clients to be thinking about them on, Thursday night at midnight or, the weekend. And I think that kind of the blended life that you're talking about can really set us up for failure sometimes. So what can we do about that?
So when you were just explaining, kind of debunking your belief, what lies in that I've seen with all my clients is our identity, and how our identity is so wrapped up in our achievements and our accomplishments. And when we don't see ourselves within a different lens of, who am I within my relationships, or who am I, like this broader scope of self, then that's where that unhealthy, I guess, aspect comes in, where we can't shut it off at all. So I think one of the biggest things and one of the most fun things that I like to have people do is like have a talisman that they use, just like my computer is turning into a bird cage and the birds are going to sleep. Whether that's taking an article of clothing off that you wore for the day, or whether it's putting something on that indicates, okay, this is me in my family life. It could be another article of clothing, like maybe it's your pajamas. I don't know. But anything that creates that transition of like, I'm moving into a new role here and I can shut that off. Maybe it's even turning off the lights and turning it on. Like, that just like came to mind since we were playing with lights before we hopped on here. But
yep. I love that. So what I hear you is saying is emphasizing and really marking that transition. I've been writing about rituals and things like that. And I think that the other thing that stood out to me that you said earlier was transition, that we have to have a transition between work time and not work time. So part of doing an ending is endings are transitions, right? From a thing to the opposite of that. I love the clothing thing. I think that's, work clothes versus not work clothes. I think that's a good start. And then what other transitions, the light is a good idea. So what other transitions and talismans do you recommend?
I also so when someone was sharing with me that they have a hard time turning off their mind and they don't have a transition in place, I think ritual, is one of the best words to use, because then it feels sacred. It feels like something that we're doing to honor ourselves and honor our day. That can be through recognizing, because I think for people who feel guilty or judgments come up about not working when things aren't going well, it's like, okay, what did go well? What can I have gratitude for today? the biggest thing with transition too, or just your work container in general, is creating a container for your work. I think things go on and on when we don't actually, when we're not intentional with, okay, I'm going to plan that these are the 3 most important things that I do today. I'm going to include my well-being in that. So whether that's getting your workout in or however that looks for you, making sure you eat. I mean, I can't tell you how many people don't eat throughout the day when they're stressed, so on and so forth. But it's like, what container am I creating? What is the energy that I want to have behind the work that I'm doing? If it's stress, then your results are going to come, I feel, very slowly. And when you're creating a new container for yourself and you want to show up in your highest and best, what does that look like? So taking the time, I think a lot of times consultants, entrepreneurs, anyone working, we're not thinking about that because we're thinking about the work. It's like your head is down and focused on one thing and you forget about everything else.
I definitely do that. I find everything very immersive, and it's hard to kind of think about the other things that come outside of that if I'm not planful in advance, as you're saying. I think, as you said, like having those kind of natural interruptions. So having the dogs who well, you're gonna have to go outside probably every hour-ish or so, and then we have a healthy lunch that we stop for during the course of our day. I think those kind of things are helpful, but it still can make it difficult to end or to transition.
It can. And I think the more we plan for it, or even if you're somebody who needs to plan a date with friend, like being planful about things that aren't only work will help as well.
Yeah, I love that idea. You know, I've talked before that one of the reasons my day stops at 4 p.m. is that when we moved here to Martha's Vineyard, in the wintertime, we're in the, far north in Massachusetts, well, farther north than I had been in the South. And it gets dark here at 4:15 p.m. in the wintertime. And I would need to walk dogs before it was dark. And so I would stop by 4, if not earlier. And I tried my best to see if I could continue that for all around the whole year. And it's not always easy. I'm not always successful at that. If it's like 8:30 at night in the summertime and it's light outside, I have the opposite reaction. I have this oh, it's still daytime. I should still be doing something. So those kind of things I think are difficult, but what made it interesting to me was just the challenge of how close can I get to that? And so my day is 10 to 4. What I think is difficult is that a lot of us who came from corporate, I don't know if this was everybody's situation, but you're kind of revered for the longer you stay. You certainly don't want to be seen leaving early. And I mean, there was a guy who would stay very late. And we all kind of thought of him as like a victim for the company, but there's an in between, which is still way too long. So how do you see that? And what do you recommend for people who are kind of stuck in this, a long day is a good day habit?
I think, for any entrepreneur coming out of corporate, one thing that you were speaking to that I want to give light to is seasons. I think when we can start thinking about our life and our work in seasons, then we don't get stuck in that everything is linear or everything is flatlined and we do it the same all the time, because our mind works that way, yet our life does not happen that way. So I like to think of things in seasons or cycles. How am I training and planning within that cycle and within that season? I partly think that way because I have a background in health and fitness and personal training, so it's very easy for me. But for those longer workday habits, I think where people can interrupt the pattern is to recognize, because you're going to have these moments of I'm doing this the way that I used to do it and I don't want to do it that way anymore. So a way to interrupt that pattern is I'm learning how to, move from my workday to my life. Just recognizing that and being compassionate about it and curious of why do I feel the need to stay longer? Because sometimes it can be warranted and other times it's not going to serve what you're actually trying to create. So I think those just little like interruptions in the storyline can help.
Definitely. And as you said, kind of being planful about them. One of the things I noticed with my clients is that the ones who are really kind of addicted to overwork is that they kind of can't imagine what they would do with that free time. And so I have them come up with, like you said, like a date with friends or as something to do so that it isn't just freeing up 6 hours a week. It is being intentional about what I would do with that time if I had it. And so that they can look forward to it, because I don't know if you notice this as well, but like, I feel like people get stupid when they overwork. And so they kind of get amnesia. Like, what's my life like? Like, what do I even do when I'm not working? And I'm like, hold on, you're a multi-talented, multifaceted person who has just gotten immersed in this thing. Like, if you had time, what might you do? Like learn a language or like join a group who does something that you love. And I think really being intentional about those hobbies that give you a reason to stop working is a really great idea, because if it's just, I'm going to like have dinner on the couch, watching Netflix or doom scrolling or all three at the same time isn't compelling enough to get you to stop work, especially if you know that there's a lot that's going to meet you tomorrow when you come back to the office.
There's an exercise that I would do with my clients at the start. And now I can really pinpoint where they are, so I don't necessarily have to walk through the exercise, but it gives them a really good visual. So it's called the wellness wheel. Somebody can go download it off the internet, but it shows you like 8 different components of your life, and where you're spending your time. So it actually, as you mark like what percentage of your time that you're giving to a certain area, most people that I've worked with see that they're not giving a lot of time to, as much time as they would like, to recreation and fun and rest and relationships. It's like all on the side of, I am doing all these things all the time, and I just feel busy, and I'm kind of addicted to that habit or pattern, because the more you focus on, the more that you do, you're just going to stay in that cycle.
Yeah, you get in the grooves and the rut, and it stays the same and doesn't change. So I think a very exciting thing that I've been seeing on your LinkedIn has been you talking about what's going on at corporations and the work that you are exploring in that area of working with these poor corporate people who I feel bad for, who presumably love their jobs and love their work, but find that that corporate work can tend to take a toll on you physically, emotionally, spiritually, mentally, and all those kinds of things. So can you talk a little bit about the research that you've been doing and what we have learned about people in those corporate positions and the toll that it takes on them? Because I think it's informative for us as consultants to hear that. And also a lot of my consultants are working in companion areas, and I think they might want to know you and the work that you're doing.
Yeah. So one of the biggest things that I know you and I have talked about is the concept of burnout. And that is very prevalent. It was prevalent before the pandemic, but now we're seeing it rear its ugly head in many ways. And within corporations, that's people being very disengaged. That's people having health issues, and that's affecting the bottom line for corporations. I was in a conversation yesterday where it's costing a corporation $4 million of healthcare costs, because people are going to the emergency room for things that they honestly don't need to go to the emergency room for. And when we take care of ourselves, then we don't have those emergent situations. But around burnout, so the 4 common themes that I've seen is where we always feel like we need to be on and ready to go. It's like this hypervigilant state. And that's when busyness feels comfortable and being still and relaxed doesn't feel so comfortable. So like finding the middle ground for yourself within that, I think, is super important. And I'll shift to the larger scope in a second, but I want to kind of share something that people can tap into for themselves or identify themselves within. Then when we're repressing we were talking about recreation, fun, relationships, when we're kind of repressing those areas of our lives and not showing up as, the vibrant person that we are, then we tend to avoid. So that's when we can get into the numbing and doom scrolling. And it's like, okay, where do I feel, whether it's like not good enough to have, like, believe that I can have more than just my work life and more than just my success and my achievement. Like, who am I outside of that? That's like a big one for people. Then where we feel that makes us feel disconnected from ourselves and other people. And again, that leads to distraction. And then when we're on edge about all of this, because we will be on edge, that's when pain starts to creep in. So we can have injuries and health challenges where we didn't before, because we're ignoring, repressing, avoiding so much of ourselves within our life. So companies that really care about their, it's always about the bottom line and the numbers and the this and that, but who also care about their people and how their people are showing up to be creative and innovative within their positions, because stress does not give you that. Or constant stress does not give you that. There's healthy stress. You need just enough, just like with training, you need just enough to make a change, but too much is going to cause problems. And corporations are in the too much.
Yeah.
So it's like, how can we create a holistic environment? How can we change workflows? Like, overwork is one of the biggest issues. And that's usually part of systems, is what I'm seeing, antiquated systems, people not communicating in healthy ways, because there is healthy communication and unhealthy communication. So it's changing that narrative and making small shifts to create a ripple effect down the road. Because I think, just in some conversations that I've had, corporations that are up to big things and want to make big changes away from how we've done things in the past, they're going to have to make a change within their culture and environment. And we're seeing that all over the place.
Yeah, they can't keep doing it this way because we see people dropping like flies, and we can't keep blaming the people, because eventually we're going to start to realize maybe it's not the people's fault.
Yeah,
it's a pattern that's like 100% is a little too conclusive and persuasive. So, what kind of solutions are you offering to those companies? Like, what should they do?
They should consider well-being as a main component, but not well-being in the way that we've seen employee wellness, where, I'm going to give them a gym membership, or we're going to bring yoga in, because the issue is people are too distracted and overwhelmed already. You don't want to give them more to do.
Yeah.
You want to create an environment that's actually supportive of them feeling empowered to make choices that serve them and their health and, their wealth, not only monetarily, but the wealth of self, the wealth of their life. And that takes intention, that takes planning, that takes thinking of things in a new way. It takes experimentation, which a lot of people don't feel comfortable with because they're like, money, money, money. And, but that's kind of the truth of it. You can't just throw things at people, trainings where it's like, oh, learn this and then do this. They already have enough on their plate.
Yeah.
So it's like the individual, yes, has a responsibility, but the corporation and what we're seeing has a greater responsibility to their people if they care.
Right.
That's
which is
true.
already, I think this is the kind of thing where the altruistic ones are going to be first, and then there's going to be the ones who are there because like, well, it's expensive not to care. So they'll be forced to care because of that. So is this like standing desks? It seems to be like you can't add more stuff. So does it incorporate into what they're already doing?
Standing desks are great where they're needed, I guess. And it's funny because I've had clients who work from home that work for corporate and had standing desks. So, that's something that's out there, but I think it's greater in the sense of recognizing and acknowledging people and their lives, and that life is also happening along with work, and allowing flexibility within that. I think that's what we're seeing in the hybrid workplace, that people don't want to be forced to be in a building all day if they don't need to. And can we provide them with choice? Can we try, like, there's this whole, like, I think for companies haven't trusted their employees to make good decisions. And I think that's part of our future and part of the hybrid workspace. And I think there's simple things that I've seen where a company has an inner work day on their schedule once a month. So it doesn't matter what somebody decides to do with that day, but it's a day where everybody is not expected to work. So it's things like that within workflows that can change the game. It can be, and like there is an end within the workflow to the day. So people don't feel like they need to carry the workday with them. I think also teaching people boundaries and energetic like being a supportive environment of those things.
Yeah. I love it. I think it speaks to company values, and also like, what is our agreement with one another? So in my business, a lot of times I would tell, I have a team of 10 to 12, we're all remote, and I might send something, but I for a while I thought, well, I've been clear that I don't expect them to respond until tomorrow. And then I started thinking, how about I just, put the delayed send on it so that it doesn't actually even send until tomorrow? Because I think I, with my own team, I never want to send the implication that you should be working after hours. You're always welcome to work whenever you want to, but this is when the company is going to be closed officially. If you choose to come in and catch up on stuff, that's fine. And luckily I don't see that as being a problem. My team does a good job of like not being always on. And I'm also very careful about the use of the term urgent with anything. Like, it better be like really urgent. And because I've been in situations in the past where everything was urgent all the time. So I do think that those, the ensuring that the company shares your values, and then going back to consultants, like our own values, I feel like we, yes, sometimes we're in response to clients who expect something unreasonable. And I think you need to make that agreement with them in the very beginning. But a lot of times I think, Ashley, we're our own abusers. We really are the ones who are driving ourselves to work until 9 o'clock or later, or whatever we do. So what's a way we can be gentler just from that point of view?
So the first thing that comes to mind, so there's the deeper inner work to not be our own abuser anymore, because that does require, deeper work with self, and that self-leadership of doing things differently. And a pattern interruption of that is, I am learning how to. So that's being compassionate with yourself. Because I think when we are, or I know, I don't just think, I know when we're our own abuser, we're being very hard on ourselves. So we need to learn to be more compassionate. And when we can shift our story of one of judgment to one of compassion, of like, I'm learning how to do this, I'm giving myself time and space to learn this, then it's like, it's working not only with our inner child who might believe that things need to be hard, based on upbringing, but also gives a little space between that hardness, but also not that, because the thing that I found for myself and some of the other people that I've worked with, like, we don't want to be so ooey gooey at the same time. It's like, ew, Like, I don't want to get too emotional about that.
Yeah. Keep us in control here.
More control.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think noticing when we're in that judgment of self, and like just being curious about it, like, why am I being so hard on myself about this? And how can I introduce a little bit more space and compassion?
Yeah, I think that's definitely the way to go. It's a good place for us to end. Like the better place the way to begin to end your day on something even resembling on time is to have compassion for yourself and like take it easy on yourself. Yeah, I love that. I think we can do that. So I have so many of your blogs and your concepts that I would love to share with our audience. So where is a good place for them to go to find out more about you?
LinkedIn is probably the best, because I am having a website transition. So it's not on a website. I would say LinkedIn is one of the best places, because that's where I'm publishing the most posts. I also have a blog on Medium. So it would be medium.com/Ashley DePaulis is another place. Yeah, I would say those are the two best.
Perfect. I'll put links to those in the show notes. And what I really want, so you have a concept of adult recess. I want people to go and read about. I want them to read all your latest ones on your research on what's going on in corporations, because as I said, we too, especially a lot of us ex-corporate people are holding on to a lot of the habits that people are struggling with currently in corporate. Even if I look back and I go, oh yeah, that was like 2 versions ago of me, I still identify with a lot of the things that are happening. So I love reading what you've got going on. And I just consider you a thought leader in this area. And there's a lot of innovation of what you've been talking about that I'm excited for other people to read.
You just reminded me of adult recess and taking breaks, building breaks into your day. Yes.
Yes. Oh, and how long was recess? Like 15 minutes, 10 minutes?
It could be 5 minutes if that's what you have, because so if you find that you're in a stressful state, you can just do a forward fold, and that can change your state of stress into one of more relaxation. So I think people can get a little confused around rest and relaxation, of meaning like that's when I'm totally kaput on the couch and doing nothing. No, rest can be active. It can just be changing your state in the moment. And that's what the real intention behind those adult recesses is changing our state of being to one that we want to be in, one that brings us energy and aliveness and focus to do the things that we're trying to do.
Awesome.
And then we do it in a quicker amount of time. So you don't need all day.
Well, that's the thing, is that's why when you say, rest looks like collapse on the couch, I'm like, that's because you've driven yourself, beyond reasonable, your own reasonable abilities. And I love that you could just set an alarm throughout the day. I like for my alarm, by the way, not to be alarming. I don't like it to be, I like a lovely little
chimes.
Yes. A little chimes to say, hey, like maybe take a little rest right now. And, and the forward fold, you have a ton of these other ones that are like, just like little poses and postures you can do that change your state of being. And they're amazing. So definitely check out Ashley's LinkedIn, because there's just tons of great, philosophically, like big picture. I think this stuff is genius. And like the little teeny nuggets that you give out on your LinkedIn posts, I've just find so valuable. Like just taking that little thing and being like, oh, I could just do a forward fold during, for 3 minutes during my day and change my state of being. So, all right. Thank you so much, Ashley. It's been amazing to talk with you. And I just get so many ideas, and I get inspired to take better care of myself, and also hope that by doing so, I'm encouraging and, empowering other women consultants to be able to do the same thing. And I know we have some dudes who listen as well, and men who take care of themselves are also making things better for everybody. So with that, I want to thank everybody for listening and encourage you to find a time to end your day and get really consistent around ending your day, because you've done plenty. You have already done plenty. And with that, I wish you a profitable and joyful consulting business. Thanks for watching. Please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell to get video updates. Thanks.